All right. So continuing on with our linear equations. So in the last video, we talked about standard form, slope-intercept form, the types of slope, examples of slope. This one, we're just going to cover in this video just the parallel versus the idea of perpendicular lines. Okay. So parallel lines go in the same direction. So those two lines there would be considered parallel because they go in the same direction. So when they go in the same direction, when they're graphed, they may, if I provide a y-axis and if I provide an x-axis here, they're going to have different starting points. What was the starting point? The starting point was the y-intercept. So where they cross the y line is different. So their y-intercepts are different. But if they head the same direction, if they're changing the same way, well, what does change go with? Slope is change, because slope tells you how those roads are changing, what direction they're headed. Their slopes are the same. Okay, so as we look at these, as you guys walk through those and we look at parallel lines and what makes something parallel, parallel lines have slopes that are similar, I should say equal is a better word. The slopes of parallel lines are equal. So that's what makes two lines parallel. The y-intercepts are different, but the slopes are the same. Okay, just like roads in any city. All right, they go in the same direction. They may start in different parts of town. Okay, Tropicana and Craig Road both go east and west, but they're different roads. They start in different locations. Okay, but they have the same slopes. All right, perpendicular lines, which is what the next one we'll talk about, to be perpendicular, they are very special. They're special cases. Parallel lines are special cases. Perpendicular lines are special cases. So if I provide an x and y axis, even that, I'll tell you right now, the x-axis and the y-axis are perpendicular. Okay? So what does it mean to be perpendicular? Perpendicular means that they cross, and these two lines do cross, and they cross specifically at what's called a 90-degree angle. So when I have two lines, the x and y axis are perpendicular to each other because they cross at a 90-degree angle and they head in different directions. Now, if I looked at two lines that aren't the x and y axis, which is totally okay, we'll put in a line there and we'll put in a line here. If you notice, the two blue lines that I put in there, those are crossing at hopefully a 90-degree angle. Those are perpendicular. Now, what do we notice about their slopes? In order to make two lines perpendicular, one slope, if you notice, this guy's slope is positive and this guy's slope is negative. So they're going to have slopes with different signs, and in order for them to go different directions, their slopes are reciprocals of each other. Okay, so they'll have different slopes, and their slopes will be flipped versions of each other. And flipped versions we call as reciprocals. Okay, so the slopes of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. Or I could say they have reciprocals with opposite signs of each other, but the whole idea, and we'll talk about what these things mean, I'll give you two examples here. Okay, so these lines are parallel. y equals 2x plus 7, and y equals 2x minus 979. These two lines are parallel. How do I know they're parallel? Because their slopes are the same. That's what makes these parallel. These two lines, I'll give you an example of lines that are perpendicular. These two lines are perpendicular because their slopes have opposite signs. So one's negative and one's positive. So their slopes have opposite signs. That's what I mean by opposites. And their slopes are reciprocals of each other. They're flipped. Okay? Has nothing to do with the y-intercept. Notice the y-intercept's got nothing to do if they're parallel or perpendicular. Okay? And in some cases, if I ask you about lines, some lines have nothing in common. So they're not anything. So y equals 5x minus 13 and y equals 2/7 x plus 4, these are neither parallel or perpendicular. Their slopes don't have any type of pattern with them. They're not the same. They're not opposite signs with different reciprocal or flipped reciprocals. So not all lines are parallel. Not all lines are perpendicular. If they're not parallel or perpendicular, they can be neither. Okay? Not all fruit is apples or oranges. They could be something different. So not all lines are either parallel or perpendicular. They might be different from that. Okay? So in the directions on 13 and 15, it says determine whether the lines are. Here's your three choices as I grab my yellow highlighter. Parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Okay, so it's 1 in 3 chance. We'll look at 13 and 15. So how do we determine if something's parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Slopes. Find their slopes. So it's easiest to do, what I would do is I would write them in slope-intercept form. So I would start moving things around. So I'm going to minus 10x here. I would get y by itself. Y equals 5 minus 10x, those are not like terms, so I'll write them like that. I'm going to divide everybody by 5. You can write it as a fraction or using the division sign, it doesn't matter. Y equals negative 10 divided by 5 is negative 2, plus 5 divided by 5 is 1. So there's the left side in terms of slope-intercept form. Let's do this one over here. So I think the best way to go about it is to get y by itself. So y is on the right, so let's subtract 16 from both sides. So we're going to get negative x minus 16 equals 2y. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I'm going to get, these cancel, y equals negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. Remember, there's a 1 in front of the x. Negative 1 divided by 2 is not a whole number. It's negative 1/2. So now we're going to compare those two lines. Okay, so what I have here is I have y equals negative 2x plus 1. I have negative, or y equals negative 1/2 x minus 8. You're going to tell me, are these lines parallel? Are they perpendicular? Or are they neither? How are you going to decide that? All you're going to do is you're going to use your blues clues here. Check out your slopes. Are the slopes the same? Is negative 2 the same as negative 1/2? I agree. They are not the same. Good answer over there. So, they're not the same, so they're not parallel. To be perpendicular, they have to have opposite signs. This one's negative, and this one's negative. They don't have opposite signs. They are reciprocals of each other, but they don't have opposite signs, so they don't fit the criteria for perpendicular. So if they're not parallel and they're not perpendicular to each other, then these lines are neither one of those things. And it's okay. Sometimes things are neither. They're not parallel or perpendicular. Okay? And 15 runs the same way. Okay? So get y by itself. So what would I do on 15? I'd move the 8x over. So I'm going to add 8x. I'm going to add 8x. I get 8y equals 8x. I'm going to write this. I would never write this, but I'm going to write it just so you know, 8x plus 0. I'm going to divide both sides by 8. So I get y equals 8 divided by 8 is 1x plus 0 divided by 8 is 0. I'm going to get over here, I'm going to get y by itself. I'm going to do some math magic here. It's not math magic. I'm going to move the y to the other side because it's much easier to add for me. So I'm going to get x equals 4 plus y. I need to get y by itself, so we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. So I'm going to get x minus 4 equals, opposites cancel, y. So here are your two equations. We have this. We have this. Are they parallel? Are they perpendicular? Or are they neither? Look at their slopes. So the slope is the number in front of the x when it's written in slope-intercept form. So here your slope is 1. Here the slope is the number in front of the x. There's no number there, so that means you have an x. We just didn't say how many, so that means you have 1x there. So right here, my slope is 1. Their slopes are the same. Okay, so as I look at that, their slopes are the same. Slopes are the same. When their slopes are the same, parallel. All right, parallel, perpendicular, neither. Just deciding what kind of lines you have.